Good morning, everyone. We've got a very large crowd here, and we've got a lot to get through. So we are going to jump right in. I welcome everybody and thank you for being here. If you have not been to one of these webinars before, I'll do my best to get through the content as quickly as possible and then try to leave some time for Q&A at the end. If, however, we run out of time at the end and you still have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Happy to have follow-up conversations offline, as this is a very important topic and one that's changing constantly. Without further ado, though, let's go ahead and get started. Just going to switch this over, share my screen. Right. Beautiful. And I will do my best to monitor the chat. We also have Mary here from Paragus who can do it. And so feel free to post questions there. And then at the end, we'll allow people to unmute and ask questions live as well. Just by quick kind of thumbs up or nods of head, can everybody see my screen okay? Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Just want to get this. There we go. Great. All right. So for anybody who's not familiar with Paragus IT, as I know we do have a large audience today, just a quick history of the company. We've been around for over 20 years. We're currently located in two markets. We serve Central Massachusetts out of our office in Worcester and Western Massachusetts out of our office in Hadley. We're about 60 full-time employees split between those two locations, and we're serving about 130 companies today. And for those 130 companies, predominantly, it's our job to be their IT department. In some cases, we're their entire IT department, and in some cases, we're supplemental to the resources that they have in-house. But a big part of that job is staying on top of changes that are happening in the market and with technology in general, and making sure that we're advising our clients. And one of the ways we do that is through webinars like these. So we're happy to have you here today. Let me just tell you a little bit about kind of why we're here, what brought us together today. So I know there's still some of you out there who believe that AI is being overhyped and that you can just kind of stick on the sidelines, sit back and let it play out. The goal of today's presentation is to kind of quickly get you caught up on where AI is right now, outline briefly where I think it's headed in the future, and then most importantly, to help you understand what you need to be doing right now. However, for those of you who are still thinking that AI is being overhyped and that this is a fad that you can simply sit back and let it play out, I do want to encourage you to pay really close attention. I don't think that is the case, and I think what you're going to find is that sitting on the sidelines in this particular case could end up actually being very dangerous. The reality is that AI is not a fad, and it is not being overhyped. In fact, I had the honor of being on a call with Eric Schmidt last week, one of the co-founders of Google, and his perspective is that AI is actually being grossly underhyped. To give you some additional perspective, you've got very smart people like Sundar, who's the CEO of Alphabet, who's Google's parent company. And his perspective is that artificial intelligence could have more profound implications than electricity or fire on humanity. And then you've got smart guys like Peter Diamandis, founder of XPRIZE and Singularity University, who said that at the end of this decade, there's going to be two businesses who have fully embraced and utilized AI and those who are out of business. And I really don't think this is overstated. I think this is one of those moments where we're going to have to change quickly and adapt, or we're going to find ourselves on the wrong side of history. But with that, where are we right now in terms of the AI evolution and kind of the AI trajectory? There's a lot of different ways we can answer this question, but I'm going to use this simplified kind of three-stage model that's become pretty popular. So the first stage is what we call narrow intelligence, or ANI. This is often referred to as machine learning. And this is where AI is very good at doing a specific set of tasks, but in a pretty narrow scope. We're moving closer and closer to what we would call stage two, which is artificial general intelligence. And this is the moment where AI kind of reaches human-like intelligence. And I don't mean a single human. I mean it's capable of doing collectively what all other humans are capable of doing, in a very broad kind of set of parameters and tasks. We're not there yet, but the question is really, when are we going to get there? And this is the thing that there's probably the most controversy and debate and discussion about, because this will be a moment that changes the world. And then finally, still kind of somewhat in the theoretical category, is what we sometimes refer to as ASI, or artificial superintelligence. And this is the concept that AI will actually be smarter than humanity. And I say philosophically because this is a tough question. How do we imagine what's smarter than us? How do we even understand what super intelligence would look like? And also, who's going to create it? How do we create something smarter than ourselves? Or if we don't, is it created by the AI? And what does that look like? And how does that work? I think it's less important at this particular moment in time to be concerned about ASI and more focused on the convergence of moving from ANI to AGI, which is really the time and space we find ourselves in right now. So when are we going to get there? I'll give you two perspectives that kind of give the two opposite ends of the spectrum. Ray Kurzweil thinks that we're going to be there by 2029, kind of the end of this decade. And then you've got other people who believe it could be as fast as this year. I don't know that either of those predictions are right. They're both predictions, but I think it's likely going to be somewhere in that space. I do think this is something that is going to happen this decade, and some of the most recent predictions are putting it as early as 2027. So what does it look like right now? Well, let's take a look at some of the kind of stats that talk about kind of where AI lives right now. First, ChatGPT hit 1 million users in a record-setting 5 days. However, more impressively, they got to 100 million users in 2 months, and they're now sitting around 400 million active users. And that's despite the fact that lots of other AI models have come on to the mainstream, and there's now competition for those users. It just shows you that this is something that is growing very quickly and getting a very fast adoption. But how smart is the current AI that we have access to? So this shows you ChatGPT 4, which has now been out for a little while. We now actually have Chat 4.5 and o1. But if you look at kind of comparatively what the intelligence level is here, these are common human tests that we take. And what you can see here is how ChatGPT 3.5 performed as compared to the average human test taker, and then how ChatGPT 4 performed as compared to the average human test taker. So in other words, just taking the bar exam as an example, ChatGPT 4 is now outperforming about 90% of human test takers. Is on par with about 90% of human test takers. And in some cases, like GRE, we're already almost at 100%. So what this shows is that these tools are getting smarter and smarter in at least a measurement of intelligence. Here's another measurement, which is IQ testing. Claude 3 has scored the first triple-digit IQ test score for an AI model, getting 101, which is 18 and a half questions right. And this just shows you the percentage of that compared to a random guesser, which is, of course, 50%. So you can see the different kind of really common AI models that are on the market today and how they're comparing to the IQ tests. Now, the thing is, this is happening so quickly and changing so often that anything I show you is already dated because the data is constantly evolving and changing. But this does give you some sense of what some of the things that we're looking at are. And then maybe kind of a very different perspective. This was a study that was done using an fMRI machine. And what they were trying to do is figure out, can AI read our thoughts and understand what we're thinking? So what they did was they hooked a bunch of patients up to an fMRI machine and they showed them images. The patient studied and stared at those images while the AI scanned the brain. The AI had no idea what they were looking at, but it used an image generation technology to try to create an image based on the brain waves of the person and what they thought they were likely looking at. And this is what they came up with. And so what you're showing here is some actual like practical use cases where AI is actually starting to be able to do things, for example, read our mind and be able to predict or guess at what we're thinking about or what we're picturing or imagining. So this is the sentiment that I think we get the most commonly. This is happening really quick, and there's a lot already going on in the world, and it feels like this is just too much. And I think a lot of people are feeling a little overwhelmed and like they're not quite ready for just how quickly this is all transpiring. But if you're not ready, I think now is the time to start getting ready. And if you're feeling ready, I challenge you that you probably are not as ready as you think you are. And so what I want to do today is kind of walk you through some of the things that we're seeing and what some of the things that we think people need to be paying more attention to in their AI journey. But before I do that, I'm going to go back in time here, and this will be somewhat of a rhetorical question, but I'm willing to bet the majority of people on this call can guess how these two objects go together and can remember when these two objects were frequently used together. Now, What I want you to imagine is that for those of you who are not familiar, in the 90s, when we wanted to reset a tape and we didn't have a tape recorder present, we would use a pencil, stick it in, and twist it. Or if the tape got out, we'd use it to pull the tape back in. Here's the thing, that was true in the 1990s. What's a little bit challenging for some of us to realize is that we're actually now at 2025 closer to 2050 than we are to the 1990s. We are closer to what the 2050 milestone is going to look like than the nostalgic days of these two objects. So as we think about that, as we start to imagine what is going to happen in the next 25 years, that's a common projection milestone, is to look out 25 years and figure out what is the next quarter century going to look like. But I would imagine a lot of you struggle to do that. It's hard to fathom what 25 years into the future is going to look like. So how do we do that? How do we even begin to guess at what the future is going to be? I'd encourage you, while I'm talking, take a pen and paper or a spare notebook and just jot down an idea or two. What do you think will be different 25 years from now? What major technological breakthrough are we going to have? And how far in the future is that going to happen? While you're starting to think about that, I'm going to share another fact. For the moment, forget the 25 years. I want you to think about modern humans have been on this planet for somewhere between 200 and 300,000 years, depending on how you measure it. And during that time, we figured out how to master fire. We made tools. We built cities, invented electricity, made computers, gave birth to the internet, created nuclear power, and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of other very impressive technological advancements. Go us. However, using the principle of exponential growth, basic math suggests that in the next 5 years alone, we are going to see more technology advancement during those 5 years than the previous 250,000 years combined. Let that sit in for a moment. In the next 5 years, we will see more advancement technologically than the rest of our human existence combined. That is the rate of change and speed of change that we need to be mindful of and thinking about as we go into the second half of this decade. So back to my question, where will we be in 2050? It's really difficult to fathom. In many ways, it's hard to imagine where we're even going to be in that 5 years from now. However, I will share some theories that are all backed by either current or emerging scientific breakthroughs. So in the next 25 years, we're going to go from owning and driving cars to fully autonomous transportation services, where we're signed up for subscriptions, whether those be autonomous cars or other vehicles that are driving us and transporting us to where we want to be. We're going to move entirely off of coal and natural gas. These will be antiquated and we'll move over to fusion, and all energy will be fusion driven. We're going to move from having to touch or even speak to technology in order to use it to brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, where we can simply think what we want the technology to do, and the technology will respond entirely to our thoughts. We're likely going to move from having to communicate verbally to being able to communicate through brain-to-brain communication, being able to pass messages, thoughts, feelings, admiration, just through our brain connections. We're going to move from it taking 24 hours to get from New York to Australia to supersonic and hypersonic travel. We're going to move from government currencies to almost entirely crypto-based currencies that are not tied to any single government entity. We're going to move away from any and all manual labor to AI robots taking over all of those dangerous, dirty, or labor-intensive tasks. We might even be moving away from speaking for our pets to being able to have human-to-pet communication systems. There's some interesting and fascinating work going on here. We're likely going to go away from having a single planet to having colonized at least the moon and probably Mars as well. We're going to move from working for a living to likely some sort of a universal basic income, or UBI, that provides the income that we need to sustain ourselves. And maybe most controversially, we may be moving from a concept of death to at least a very, very prolonged lifespan, if not a concept of immortality, as we continue to have enormous breakthroughs in longevity of life. And with a little hope, I'm really hoping we finally get that Jetson car that we've been promised for over 25 years. I think we're due for it. And there's some interesting prototypes coming out that would suggest that we're not that far away. So, what should you be doing as business leaders, as executives, as people who are going to be dramatically impacted by this? And that's what I want to spend kind of the balance of our time together on and give you some practical advice and some recommendations. So, the first thing you need to do is focus. As I've hopefully just demonstrated, there's a lot going on and it's happening very fast. Now is not the time to sit on the sidelines and see how it plays out, but it's also important that you don't get overwhelmed and go in too many directions. In the remainder of my presentation, I want to walk you through what I think a business executive in 2025 should be paying attention to. Let's start by looking at big things going on right now that are immediately applicable to most, if not all of you. So these are the four big things that I want to cover today. I want to talk about where we are in the AI in robotics field. I want to look at some AI in industry-specific use cases, look at AI to augment C-suite executives, and look at how AI is starting to become autonomous employees. Those are the four big things I hope to leave you with today. So we'll start off with the AI in robotics. And for a lot of us, this is where it almost feels more spooky when the AI goes from behind the screen to the physical world where we're interacting with it. And there's two examples I want to show you. One kind of on the commercial side, more industrial, and one on the more residential consumer side. Let's start with the industrial side. This is figure 2.0. He's a humanoid robot. And just some context for this, physical labor today is about 50% of global GDP. It's around $40 trillion a year. And predictions indicate that by 2030, there's about 85 million jobs that could be replaced by these types of robots as their technology continues to improve, the battery life gets better, and the cost goes lower. So let's just take a look. That's one example. And the price of these things right now is still somewhat puts them outside of what's going to really be the tipping point. But as these continue to come down in price and improve their intelligence, and most importantly, improve the speed at which they're able to be trained and learn new tasks, you're going to see a broader and broader adoption of this type of technology to replace any kind of physical labor, especially that labor that is hard to find, that's dangerous, um, or that just organizations that are trying to fill additional shifts or produce additional volume. On the more kind of domestic side of things, here's another example. it- all kinds of different opinions right now about Tesla as a company and kind of their founder. But at the end of the day, the goal of Tesla and their autonomous Optimus robots is the idea is to try to make them kind of like domestic level robots. So being able to drive the cost down to between 15 and 20,000, produce them in mass scale, and be able to have them at the price point where the average American household could have one of those in their house, acting as an assistant, as somebody to take on household chores, and to provide additional support in the household. Now, there's still some challenges there that need to be overcome. But I think what you can see is that actually the robot you just saw was Generation 2. Gen 3 just got released, and Gen 3 already has some pretty significant improvements over Gen 2. And that happened within the course of about 18 months. And I think that's what we're starting to see is the cycle time between major breakthroughs is going from decades to half decades to years, and now we're to quarters, where every quarter we're seeing another breakthrough. And if you think about the pace that we're going to see over the next 5 years, quarters are going to become months, months are going to become weeks. And we're just going to see this developmental kind of cycle get shorter and shorter, where we're seeing more significant breakthroughs. And so if that's where we are today, it's not hard to imagine where we're going to be not that long from now. So that's the robotic side of it. I'll shift gears for a minute and I want to talk about some AI and industry use cases. A lot of the AI that we've been exposed to so far has been fairly broad-based AI. So it wasn't designed to work in a specific industry necessarily. It was things like ChatGPT, which are very broad and can be used by anybody for a whole host of tasks. What we're starting to see right now, though, is the shift into AI that's targeted at specific industries. And there's a handful of industries that I think are getting targeted faster and kind of hitting harder, which we'll look at, but we'll also kind of explore where some of this is going to be going in the future. So I want to start with kind of what industries are going to be impacted by AI. This is a question I get all the time. I think mostly people are asking, is this going to happen to my industry? The answer is pretty straightforward. Primarily, it's going to be the ones who either depend on employees, use technology, have a lot of data, interact with customers or patients, analyze information, make strategic decisions, manage logistics, do sales and or marketing, and have one or more offices or have employees who work remotely. In other words, so far I've only found one industry that I think might actually be exempt, and even that is questionable. So the reality is there is no escaping this. This is the kind of technology that is going to impact just literally every single one of us. It's going to impact us in our personal lives, and it's certainly going to impact every single one of our businesses. This is not something that is focused, it's not narrow, it's not just going to be seen in healthcare or manufacturing or retail. It is going to span the entire gamut. If your business is interacting with any of the things that is listed off, know that this is coming and you want to make sure you're on the right side of it. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of some of the work that has already transpired. So there was an interesting study that was done very recently where they paired AI against doctors in diagnosing some very complex medical cases. So the baseline, doctors alone were able to correctly diagnose the cases about 74% of the time, or with 74% accuracy. Then, interestingly enough, when the doctors partnered with AI and used AI as a tool, they were actually able to improve their accuracy up to about 76%, which is great. And I think this is how a lot of us have been thinking about AI up until this point. It's a tool to help smart people do their jobs faster or better. We heard that a lot. However, here's the really interesting piece of this puzzle. When the AI operated entirely independently, it got a 90% accuracy score. So now we're shifting from smart people using AI to do their jobs faster and better to the AI actually doing better on its own. This is a very important study because it really represented a turning point in the way that we think about how AI can be utilized and how autonomous or non-autonomous it should be. Another study that's been done, this one's a little bit older. AI was pitted against 5,000 human coders, and the AI outperformed 45% of the top coders in the world. The theory here is that we may be moving toward a world where we don't have human coders. AI is very good at writing code because it's its native language. It understands code very well. And I think that we're going to continue to see that evolve and change. I don't know that we'll completely get to know human coders in the next 5 years, but I think we will see a significant decrease in the amount of coders needed in order to produce high productivity code. And then here's another interesting example. This will explain why Hollywood has been so concerned about how AI is going to impact them and why you're seeing writer strikes and Screen Actors Guild coming out against AI. And I'll show you this quick video.
This is the future of visual storytelling. LTX Studio gives form to your ideas, bringing them to life. Just a handful of words can transform your concept into a story. Weave it into a compelling narrative.
Can we make it a regular courtroom drama set in New York City?
Sure. Then generate to elevate it into a grand production with music, dialogue, and sound effects.
Stop. Yeah, I like it. But can the car be red?
You got it.
You're gonna hate me, but can we try it with a guy?
No problem.
Actually, let's go back to a girl.
Okay.
How about storyboarding?
No problemo.
We need an extra scene here.
Simple.
So, I have some ideas about casting.
Okay.
Can we talk lighting?
Sure.
Does this thing do titles?
How's this? Whatever your creative wishes, LTX Studio harnesses the power of AI and gives you the ability to supercharge the creative production process. From camera angles to casting, through styling and contextual editing, LTX is a holistic movie maker for all. LTX Studio. Join the waitlist today. This is the future.
Now, it's not hard to kind of see why that would be very, very disruptive to the movie industry. The ability for any one of us in our living rooms to take an idea that we have and conceptualize it into a full-length feature movie with all of the sets and actors and actresses and designs and special effects. It's pretty impressive, and you can see how that's going to dramatically transform that industry, bring a lot of the cost out of it, but in the meantime, displace a lot of the people who make their living in that industry. So you can see just an example of where we're talking about incredibly disruptive changes coming down the pipe. I'll give you another one. This is on more manufacturing, but there's similar use cases to this.
Hey, engineers and designers. Today we're exploring something revolutionary in the CAD world, text to CAD by Zoo.dev. Imagine creating complex 3D models just by typing what you want. Let me show you how powerful this is. Text to CAD is an open source tool that's changing how we approach hardware design. Instead of clicking through menus and tools, you simply describe what you want to create. Let's create something practical, a mounting plate with specific features. Watch how easy this is. First prompt, create a 4" by 6" plate with a hole in each corner for a number 10 bolt. Fillet each corner. Make the part phthalo blue. Look at that. A perfectly dimensioned plate appears instantly. Let's modify it. Change the thickness to 5". The change happens immediately. No need to search for the extrude command or input fields. Now, let's add another feature. Add a 2" diameter hole, 2" deep to the center of this surface. Perfect for mounting components. Finally, change the fillet radius to 0.5". Notice how smooth and intuitive these changes are. This tool isn't just about convenience, it's about revolutionizing hardware design workflows. Engineers can now iterate designs faster than ever, and even non-CAD experts can create precise 3D models. Try it yourself at zoo.dev. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more engineering tech reviews.
So those of you who have any experience doing CAD design or are in manufacturing know how that's going to be very disruptive technology and could displace a lot of work, but also just speed a lot of things up, make things easier, make things faster, reduce complexity. And that's also what's going on here.
Hey, engineer.
Some other industries that I think we should be paying really, really close attention to. There's been a lot of early disruption in interior design. There's been a lot of disruption in design and engineering. So think things like building an HVAC plan for a commercial office building, doing floor plans, creating blueprints, the types of things that we pay, professionals to sit and do with their computers. Construction industry, everything from modeling out stress loads to doing very kind of complex 3D renderings of buildings, even doing things like figuring out the appropriate schedule of which tasks to do when, how to lay out the project, navigating the permitting processes, identifying potential challenges in construction, all kinds of really interesting work going on there. We've talked about some of the manufacturing stuff, but there's a lot of other things going on there, especially with the robotics. You've got the fashion industry where you're going to be able to predict and trend fashion much more effectively. You're also going to be able to run simulations where you can detect what your sales will be, what your challenges are going to be, what markets you're going to be most successful in. Similar on the sales side, we are not far off at all having AI generated sales appointments where you have an AI doing cold calling, trying to interest you in an appointment with a person to talk more about a product or a service, and then having the AI book that sales meeting, and sometimes even the AI running the sales meeting where it's answering questions, showing you a slide deck, talking to you about it, and really cultivating very high quality leads for a company that they're delivering at the end of the day of a customer who is excited or willing to buy. You're also going to see a lot of AI used in just kind of prospect generation, lead generation. And what you're starting to see now is this really interesting phenomenon where some marketing firms are starting to think about marketing directly to AI because they know that AI is on the receiving end of a lot of this stuff. And so we actually have AI creating content for AI to consume and starting to understand what that ecosystem is going to look like, which is very different than how we've thought about it up until this point. Product design, being able to kind of instantly run simulations, build prototypes, do market penetration testing, do pricing simulations, and figure out the right way to design and launch new products. As well as finance, there's a ton of things going on there that are going to reduce time, effort, materials needed to produce financial reports, do simulations and modeling, process transactions, those types of things. And then on the transportation side, everything from autonomous buses and subways to major changes in flight, and also just the idea of having autonomous cars. This is now being piloted in several places in the US. It's very largely deployed in other countries, and we're going to continue to see that expand. And these are just some examples of industries that are seeing early disruption. But as I keep trying to highlight over and over again, there's no industry that's not going to have some significant impact on AI. So now I want to shift gears and talk about the third major point we want to cover today, which is AI augmenting the C-suite. Here's the reality. You can think of AI like the ultimate performance enhancing drug. If you're going up executives or competition that's effectively using AI to enhance their communication, their decision making, their strategic thinking, and their meeting performance, you're going to lose every single time. It's not a fair fight. And so one of the things that we need to be thinking about as business leaders, as executives, is how do we leverage AI as an augmentation? How do we enhance our performance using AI as a way to make us more effective, stronger, better, more productive, smarter? And we'll look at some of those opportunities. So here's some examples. Running mock meetings. So this has become something that I have found to be incredibly useful, where you can basically, in AI, simulate your audience. It could be your board of directors. It could be a negotiation you're about to head into for an acquisition, for a new strategic partnership. It could be your own leadership team. But you can basically create the personas and profiles of the people who are going to be in that meeting. You can then run your slide deck, your notes, your presentation, and anticipate questions, objections, likely concerns from the different participants who are going to be in that meeting. You can run that simulation as many times as you want until you have really perfected that presentation before you actually go live and have that conversation with your actual audience. The next is brainstorming solutions to very complex problems. And I was sharing an example the other night at another presentation where somebody was really struggling. I was a manufacturer in Italy. They had a significant manufacturing operation, but a lot of their debt was being financed by the Japanese government through a bunch of pieces of equipment they had purchased. And the debt was crippling them. The debt was going to put them out of business. They needed to restructure the debt. They didn't know how to restructure the debt, and so they kept approaching the Japanese government asking to have it restructured, and the Japanese government wouldn't do so. And the reason was because it's culturally unacceptable to go back and renegotiate the debt. And so the company was stuck, and they were realizing they were likely going to be facing bankruptcy. By putting together the right prompt, which I'm going to be showing you in just a moment, they were able to identify a solution that they hadn't even considered before, where basically they partnered with another Japanese company who was able to buy the debt, restructure it for them. The Japanese government saved face, nobody lost anything, and the company survived. And this was a very, very complex problem that had all kinds of different facets to it, and AI was able to navigate a potential solution to that problem. Another good use case is generating new ideas, trying to figure out new products to launch, new markets to go after, ways you can leverage existing assets or opportunities to strengthen or grow your business. Doing complex analysis, and I mean analysis that is so complex that it's hard for us to even imagine it, looking at enormous data sets and seeing patterns and trends that we would just have a hard time seeing because it's just simply too much data. We're seeing this a lot in industries like the medical field, as you can imagine, but also in legal industries where they're doing huge amounts of analysis on like a discovery where somebody might have submitted 10,000 emails and an AI agent is going through all 10,000 emails in discovery and looking for very particular patterns and trends that might have gotten missed by a team of associates who were up till 2 in the morning reading through those emails. And then finally, strategic advice, giving recommendations about how to see things differently, think about things differently, where to maybe align the business, where to maybe take the business, when to pause, when to hit the gas, those types of examples. So I'm going to show you an example now of where AI is also beginning to augment us using hardware. And I think this is an industry or kind of a whole sector that we're going to see continue to expand, where we're not just talking about using AI as software, but we're also talking about using AI as hardware. And that could be a wearable technology like the one I'm about to show you, but it also could be things like implants in our brain, contact lenses, smart glasses, all types of other technology that allows us to actually augment our abilities using AI that's hardware that's powered by AI. And this is just one small example.
The Plod Note Pin is a good idea. And while I'm sure you have millions of good ideas, the worst ones are the ideas you can't remember. That's why we've designed a wearable memory capsule. Barely noticeable until you need it. Whether on site or in a conference room. The Note Pin doesn't just record meetings, take notes, and capture ideas. It uses AI to sort the mountain of information into well-organized transcripts with speaker labels, clear, searchable summaries, professional templates, meaningful action items, and even beautiful branching mind maps. Need to recall something specific? Ask AI to search for what was said to retrieve summaries and insights around keywords, or just that one idea you forgot. Lightweight and wearable as a wristband, necklace, clip, or pin, the Note Pin can go wherever work takes you. It's like having a personal assistant or a second brain, so that you spend less time doing this and more time on what really matters. Plod Note Pin is a good idea.
Think about that for a second. Think about being able to actually Google your brain, being able to do a search for a specific word, a topic, a question, an idea, anything that you witnessed, being able to go back and recall that and pull that back up. That starts to give you a sense of what AI augmentation could look like as we bring it into not just the software realm, but also the hardware realm, where we can overlay things. And obviously there's things like augmented limbs where we can have superhuman strength and we can climb mountains and we can do things that we otherwise might not have been able to do. But it's also things like this, which is going to impact our intelligence, our memory, our recall. And imagine if you have that in conjunction with a pair of AI glasses and I walk up to somebody and it can immediately tell me who that person is, the last conversation I had with them. their children's names, their spouse name, everything else that I might want to know about that person. We're getting closer and closer to that point. There's a lot of now wearable AI technology that has a lot of really interesting use cases. So where do you start? In my opinion, it starts with mastering generative AI. Imagine you had the budget where you could hire a team of PhDs, each with different degrees spanning every imaginable field of study. They work for you 24/7. They never get sick. They never take time off. And they're always standing by, ready to eagerly jump in and assist you with absolutely any task you can imagine. 5 years ago, that kind of resource would probably have been restricted to a handful of world leaders and maybe a small number of billionaires. We're talking about an enormous expense and complexity that most of us couldn't even fathom. Today, that's available to anyone who can afford a $20 a month ChatGPT subscription. But having access to that tool, having access to a team of PhDs 24 hours a day, doesn't necessarily automatically make you a master at using it. What I want to show you now is how you can very easily, dramatically improve how well you're using tools like ChatGPT. And my hope is that if you get nothing else out of this presentation, get that you can't sit on the sidelines and understand how to write the perfect ChatGPT prompt. So here's the way I want you to think about the perfect ChatGPT prompt. There's 4 aspects to it. The first is context. Context is where you provide ChatGPT with as much background on the situation as possible. You can upload documents and spreadsheets. You can link it to websites. You can post it to YouTube videos. You can give it rich and robust histories and essays, but give it as much context about the situation that you're going to ask it to provide you input or feedback on. Second, pick which PhD you're looking for. So assign a persona to the AI. I want you to be an expert in human resources with 25 years of experience. You're great at human psychology. You know how to get the most out of people. This is where you need to tell the AI what persona it's taking on as it completes the task. This is something that is often missed in AI prompts. The third, and the thing that is most commonly missed in AI prompts, is actually encouraging the AI to ask you some clarifying questions before simply responding. Most people didn't even know this was possible, and even those who do know it's possible aren't utilizing it anywhere nearly enough. But think about it. If you had this PhD that was at your beck and call and you brought them in and said, hey, I want you to do this task for me, you would let them ask you some clarifying questions. You'd be surprised if they didn't. If you sat and talked for 15 minutes and said, go do this thing, and you didn't want them to even ask you a single clarifying question, you'd probably be skeptical about the result they would produce. You need to have that same skepticism with AI. You want to encourage it to ask you questions and provide additional clarity and direction. And then finally, the task. Describe the outcome that you want the AI to produce. This is the thing that most people jump to. They just give it a task. A task without context, without role, and without clarifying questions is going to be a lot less impressive. And when I've seen people kind of get excited about AI and then quickly lose interest, it's traditionally because they're just doing task-based prompting and they don't know how to do an effective prompt that's actually going to generate a strong result. And in just a moment, I'm going to do a demo and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Before I do that, though, I want to show you some additional advanced use cases. So one thing you can do is use something called ChatGPT projects. And if you're not familiar with what ChatGPT projects are, it's a feature that you get when you start to pay the monthly subscription. And what allows you to do is have a kind of a simulation that you can come back to over and over again. It could be a major project you're working on. For example, let's say you put on a huge conference every year and you're going to need a lot of help with that conference, generating market materials, putting together layouts, designing presentations, organizing data. Or it could be a simulation that you're going to come back to over and over again. I mentioned earlier being able to run simulated meetings. I have several projects that are meeting simulations that I come back to over and over again, where I have built out the personas of the people in those meetings, and I continue to propose ideas or concepts or run presentations, and I get feedback from the AI about how the participants are likely going to react to that based on their actual personalities and profiles that I've provided. Another advanced use case for ChatGPT is building what are called custom GPTs. And we're going to do an entire webinar just on autonomous employees. And in a minute, I'll be talking a little bit more about that. But this is like the entry level of doing that. And what it allows you to do is create an identity for a GPT that has its own personality that's persistent, and it has certain knowledge or documents that it has access to. And what's cool about these custom GPTs is you can actually share them with other people. So you could share them with other members of your team, with people in your company. You could even share them externally with customers or third outside stakeholders, where it can interact with the custom GPT that you have built that has a specific personality and a specific set of knowledge that it uses to answer questions. Very, very cool and very, very easy to design. Does not require any coding, does not require any advanced knowledge. And so just two good use cases to understand that, again, we can talk more about. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and switch gears a little bit. And I want to show you just a couple of demos. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you that perfect prompt concept. And I'm just going to use an example. Just give me one sec. Just going to grab my prompt here. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pre-written prompt in here just because you guys don't want to sit me and watch me type this out. So the first is context. This is where I'm providing the background information. And in this case, I'm talking about the company, where we're based, how many employees we have, what our plan is. And I'm talking about the fact that we want to get to $100 million in revenue. I'm talking about what our plans were. We're going to do that through organic growth and acquisitions, but I'm also providing some of the challenges. That organic growth has been difficult because there's a lot of competition in the marketplace and people don't always understand what the benefit of working with a premier provider is. And also inorganic growth has been challenging because there's so much private equity money floating around trying to take up acquisitions that make inorganic growth a little bit more complicated. Now I'm giving it the role. You're an expert business strategist. You're great at thinking outside the box, coming up with creative approaches to solve problems. You have 5 years of experience in MSP space, but prior to that, you've spent the prior 15 years working in a variety of other industries. So this is the persona that I'm asked it to put on. And I could give it a lot more data. I could tell it what school it went to if I wanted to think particularly like a Harvard MBA. Maybe I want to think more like Stanford or Yale. If I want to give it a little bit more specific experiences that I want to draw on, I can give it as much of a role or persona here, but the trick is that I'm giving it some direction to respond from. Then I'm moving on to the interview. So I'm going to say you can ask me 2 questions to help guide your response. Please ask the questions one at a time. Now, one thing that's really important is to always have this statement that says, please ask the questions one at a time. Otherwise, it lists all the questions off at once, and that can get a little overwhelming. I also know that I would usually encourage you to only ask 2 questions, but I want to keep the demonstration brief. And then finally, the task. Identify at least 5 potential strategies that would help the company achieve our goal of reaching 100 million in revenue by 2033 that I can present to the board of directors. So this is an example of what a really good prompt looks like. And what I encourage people to do is I actually just keep a notepad on my desk or on my electronic desk at all times. And what that looks like is just this. And so anytime I'm going to do a prompt, I immediately pull this document up and I just start typing. I put in my context, I put in the role, I put in the interview guide, and I put in the task that I want to perform. I then copy and paste this into ChatGPT. Keeping this handy at the ready will force you to think across these 4 lenses, and it will create much, much better outcomes in your prompting. So go back to this. We're going to go ahead and ask ChatGPT to respond. It's going to analyze, and right now I'm using 4.0 as a model. 0.1 would actually be a better model for this. It just takes a little bit longer, so I'm cheating. But 0.1 would normally be the model that I would encourage you to use for this prompt. So it's asking what's our current revenue and headcount and how much growth do you initially want to come from organic or inorganic. So I'm just going to quickly say we are about 60 people and 10 million in revenue. We want 15% organic and 15% inorganic. So I allow it to ask one more question. It's going to ask, what is my current go-to-market focus for organic growth? And I'm going to say that we've got a team of 4 salespeople backed by strong marketing support. And I could provide much more detailed and granular answers if I was trying to get a better response. I'm just trying to prove my point here and kind of get the model going. So it's recommending that we could build or acquire a vertically focused brand. So move from a broad-based approach to going much more specific into a particular focus. We could launch a Powered by Paragus partner program, where we basically become a channel affiliate and help other organizations grow their MSP businesses. We could stand up an M&A strike team with creative deal structure playbook, making us more effective at doing acquisition targets and be able to steal deals for private equity. And we could launch a strategic services advisory firm where we do more of kind of high-end consulting, the type of work that we're talking about today. So these are just 5 quick examples that it provides me, and then it's going to ask me, do you want to mock up a board-ready slide that summarizes the benefits and implementation notes? It could do cost-benefit analysis. I could ask it to do a SWOT comparison. I could do 5-year projections. I could allocate our resources. I could go on and on and on. And again, I used the simple model, whereas actually for this, O1, which is advanced reasoning, would have even been more effective at doing this task. But you get the idea that this is a great way to start that process of thinking about things that maybe you haven't thought of yet because you've got tunnel vision, you're looking at it from one perspective. This is a great way to get other thoughts or ideas on the table. And one of the things that I would encourage you to think about when you're doing this is don't limit the number of questions it's allowed to ask you. Sometimes the best breakthroughs you're going to get are actually from the questions that it asks. And it's the question that's the aha moment of, oh, you know what? I know exactly where it's going. That's a great question. And now I've had the aha moment before I've even seen the output of the results. So again, we could go on and on here, but this is just trying to give you a quick preview. Over here is that custom GPT thing I was talking about earlier, where you can very quickly click the little diamond button, go to GPTs, create a GPT, and when you're editing a GPT, you can very quickly give that GPT an identity. You can even give it a head count or a headshot, a description, and then you can upload a knowledge base. So in this case, this is an HR bot who has access to our employee handbook, who's able to answer questions in a very friendly and kind professional way. And I can then share this AI bot with other members of the company, and they can communicate with this bot to answer basic HR questions. This is an incredibly primitive example, and if we had more time, I'd go into more, but we do have an upcoming webinar where we'll be spending more time on that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to jump back to the presentation. All right, so let's get back to where we left off. So the 4th piece that we want to talk about today is AI entering the world of autonomous AI employees. Over the past 250,000 years, we went from doing things with our hands to building and using tools, to leveraging computers, to leveraging AI. In fact, in every previous webinar I've done, I've personally encouraged you to think about AI not as a replacement for humans, but just as a tool to help humans do their jobs better and faster. However, we are now entering the next phase. We've officially reached the point where just about every company has the opportunity to fully replace at least some of their workforce with an autonomous AI agent. In most cases, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It might be 1-to-2, it might be even 1-to-8. But as you break down the role into the individual tasks that that role does, you're going to be able to begin to create AI agents that can take over those individual tasks. AI agents can then collaborate with each other and pass work from one to the other. So you can train one AI agent to do one particular task. It can then do that task, hand it to another AI agent who does another task, who hands another AI agent who does another task. You can even then train other AI agents to supervise your team of AI agents. Look for problems, look for work that didn't get passed off correctly, look for errors, look for things that feel off brand, any other thing that you would traditionally hire supervisors to oversee and manage. You can even create those using AI bots or agents. And I'll just give you a couple of really short examples. These are 4 agents that I've personally built just in the last couple of weeks. We have a marketing bot who's really good at taking our brand design, our brand voice, everything about us, and helping our marketing team create better social posts, better newsletters, better blogs, using all the information we have about the company. We have Jack, our sales coach, who knows all about the Sandler sales methodology, knows all about our Paragus sales playbook, and can help our team run role practice scenarios, can give them feedback on their scripts, can help them with RFPs, and can help them with a lot of other sales today tasks. You have the Paragus Wayfinder bot. His job is to know all of our documented processes, and you can ask the Paragus Wayfinder, how do I do this? Where is this? What is that? And it can go through all of our documented processes and provide you with really good information, way beyond a search engine, because it's actually able to pull from multiple data sources, combine them together, and tell you in a more of a story base rather than just pointing you to a document. And then finally, you met Allie. That was the very beta version of Allie. Allie has grown up quite a bit, and now she is fully embedded in Teams. And employees can talk to her like an employee. They can just message her as if she's another member of our team. They can ask her a whole host of AR-related questions, and she has access to a lot of knowledge about Paragus, about different laws and compliancy, and can help guide employees with all kinds of situations that they've encountered. And these are just 4 very quick, very easy examples. None of these bots took more than 8 hours to build, and some of them only took a couple of hours to build. This is just the very, very scratching of the surface when it comes to the types of things these types of bots can do. My recommendation to all of you is to spend a whole lot of time in the next couple of weeks or maybe the next couple of months looking at your accountability chart. What I want you to do is I want you to evaluate every single position on your current accountability chart. And for each, I want you to ask yourself, should this be work that is exclusively done by a human with no AI augmentation? Should this work be done by a human, but with AI augmentation? Or should this work be done by autonomous AI agent? So you'll have human roles augmented by AI, and you'll have AI roles. And you go through your entire org chart and think about every single position with this lens in mind, and you're going to end up with a very different org chart. And from there, you can begin to prioritize how do we take the human roles that are augmented by AI and make sure they have the right augmentation, they have the right training, they have the right support and direction. And then for the roles that we believe can be fully autonomous, start finding kind of where is your biggest impact going to be and tackling the adoption and creation of those bots and agents. Which brings me to my closing point. There's a lot of work to do, and you need to get started right away. However, like all important work, it starts by asking the right question. This is the question that I hear businesses asking me most commonly. However, I would propose that is entirely the wrong question to be asking. The real question you should be asking yourself is, what is your business strategy? Identify the opportunities, threats, strengths, and weaknesses of your business. Identify where you want to go and what obstacles or challenges you will need to overcome to get there. From there, you begin to assess where and how AI can be leveraged to help you execute that business strategy. Any other approach is simply taking a solution and having it be in search of a problem. It's really important that you figure out what your strategy is as a business and then use AI to make it possible. And I encourage you, don't limit yourself. Think big, think bold, think what would change everything, what would be totally disruptive if I could do this, and then think about how you can work backwards to leverage AI to make that reality. Here's what I will say. The next 5 years are not going to be friendly to anyone trying to coast. There's going to be a lot of change, disruption, and innovation. However, even more important is it's going to happen very quickly, faster than you can imagine. For those that are ready to do the work, it could totally change their business for the better. But for those who aren't, this would probably be a good time to sell or retire. And the good news is that you don't need to go at this alone. Once you're ready to begin the journey, we are here and happy to help you, lead you, show you the path, as well as do some of the heavy lifting for you. Here are some of the ways that we're currently able to help businesses. We can provide executive consulting on leveraging AI to enhance business strategy. We can help with AI bot creation, task automation, business intelligence, help draft safe AI policies for your business around who and how and when AI should be used, and provide ongoing education and support through tools like these webinars, as well as more one-on-one coaching and training programs. So with that, I know we're at time. I'm happy to stick around for questions, but before I do that, I do just want to quickly highlight we have 2 more webinars coming up. In April, we're going to talk about anybody who's still not using SharePoint and do a Mythbusters episode on why you really should be using SharePoint for your business. And then second, in May, we're going to be launching a webinar on how to build AI bots, assistants, and custom GPTs. This is where we'll take the time to really show you practically how you can do these things. If you want to sign up for either of these webinars, you can go to paragusIT.com/webinars, and both of the signups are available to you there. With that, I will go back and open it up for questions. Feel free to post in the chat or unmute yourself. And if you're not able to stick around, I appreciate you attending and look forward to talking to you again soon. Rob, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Great presentation and good to see you. You may recall, I think it was the year 2000 of that article you started with that you helped our firm in Hadley years ago. I have a lot of questions, but I think one that pertains to what your firm does and could intersect with what my firm does. I imagine that one way to help prepare for AI and LLMs is kind of an old-fashioned librarian thing to make sure that one's cloud storage of documents, folders, the formats, and so on are neat in such a way that increasingly you could just ask an AI agent, hey, find all the documents in the last 5 years that have anything to do with why we lost the sale or gained a sale. I mean, any question at all, rather than having to curate on your own the documents and make the bot, which is still worth doing, of course, as you know. But I would imagine increasingly the AI assistant would have complete knowledge of your documents. And most people, myself included, who've been around a while, especially have a lot of mess to clean up, old versions, duplicates, etc. How important is it to clean up that base level of information as just a kind of table stakes for this world?
Yeah, it's a great question, Robin. It actually speaks a little bit to why we're taking the time to have our next webinar be on the topic of SharePoint. A lot of people might feel like, hey, why are we still talking about SharePoint? Part of it is exactly what you just said. Copilot, which is Microsoft's kind of primary AI tool. If you are a Microsoft customer leveraging a lot of the 365 ecosystem, SharePoint is a really great way to organize your data, to your point, and get it into a way that is going to make it much more accessible to AI tools like Copilot to be able to access. Now, it's not the only solution. The answer to your question is still yes. Businesses right now should worry about where is my data, how structured is it, how organized is it, how much duplication there is. And how am I going to be able to use that as fuel, as food for my AI to be able to produce better results? And the better the quality of the food, the better the quality of the product. Now, that all could change. The next evolution in AI could be AI that's really good at cleaning up terrible data and making sense of it. And that's where there's always this kind of little bit of like, we don't know. But in this moment in time, you are 100% right that having good data is the secret to success. And I think, unfortunately, 10 years ago, I remember a speaker telling an audience that data was going to be the next gold rush, and having amazing, high quality, well-structured information that was proprietary and unique was going to be more valuable than anything else. And I didn't fully appreciate it in that moment. I completely appreciate it today. The highest valued companies in the next 5 years will be those that have access to highly proprietary, really rich, very deep sources of data. There's plenty of generic data out there, but where the AI advancements are going to be revolutionary is where you have very, very unique, specific proprietary data. So if your company's been around for 20 years, 30 years, and you have lots of information, that could be worth a lot. But you need to get it organized. It obviously has to be digitized. It needs to be structured. It needs to be in a way that can be leveraged. And there's going to be an enormous opportunity there in the short amount of time to leverage that data. So it's a great point.
Yeah, and just quickly, I mean, we do search marketing, and to help with that, we're suggesting that they do this, but we wouldn't implement. We could architect it, but we wouldn't implement. I was just planning to refer them to you, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I assume that's something you do all the time. It's kind of standard stuff before AI is just cleaning up people's data and files and cloud.
It is. It's just doing it with a different lens. It's one thing to do it to make it easy for employees to find and access. It's another thing to do it with the proper tagging and structure that's really going to help the AI understand what something is.
Yes.
It does think and look for data a little bit differently.
Mhm.
So there is a little bit of a different approach that's evolving that would have to be taken.
Right, right. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the audience? Somebody's asking, which AI platform do I recommend? It's a bit like asking which is my favorite child or what's my favorite tool on my tool bench. Tool and tool bench is a better analogy. It really comes down to what you're trying to do. So, as I was just alluding to, Copilot is deeply, deeply ingrained in 365. If you're using a lot of 365 tools, Copilot can be a very good partner at understanding that data, and it's getting better and better. ChatGPT is probably still the most powerful generative AI tool out there, and it's constantly being iterated and evolved, and new versions of it are coming out. But then you've also got other competitors like Cloud and Gemini, which are equally impressive. And I think Claude especially is starting to get some kind of some accolades and looking more and more intelligent. Gemini, I think, is a little bit like the black sheep of the AI family, where it's had a false start, it's had a couple of missteps. Google doesn't seem to quite have it together yet, which is interesting because this could totally disrupt all of Google's business. So there's a lot still going on. It's changing constantly. The one thing I will say is that I still remain very skeptical of the AI products coming out of China, and I do caution people from adopting those too quickly. I do think there are some ulterior motives there, and I think some of the data that's being offered is not entirely accurate or representative of the whole story. So I do caution people against using some of the products coming out of China. And you need to be cautious with any tool you use. As I mentioned, one of the things that we do for businesses is help them develop AI policies, how to safely use data, and which data to put in, what data not to put in. But I would just kind of categorically right now avoid the Chinese products for a little while until we can understand them a little bit better and get a little bit more understanding of kind of where that data is going and how it's being used. At the end of the day, though, start with a use case and then work backwards to figure out what's the right AI tool for this use case. If I'm trying to build a bot to interface with customers, it's going to be one thing. If I'm trying to understand all the documentation I have in my SharePoint library, it's a different thing. If I'm trying to create a sales tool for my sales team, it's a different thing. So across those 4 tools that I showed you earlier, all 4 of those bots are built on a different platform, a different technology. And that's because they each have different use cases, and I use the best technology for the use case. And so you will probably have to be more flexible where it isn't a one-size-fits-all approach and you can put all your eggs into a single technology. You likely will be using a myriad or kind of a mosaic of technologies to get the result you're looking for. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and let everybody go. I want to thank you again for being here today. And if you have additional questions, or if there's things that we can help you with in your AI journey, please do not hesitate to reach out. We're happy to consult with organizations in the area who are passionate about this or as passionate as we are and who need some guidance or direction. So thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you guys all again soon.